Hi, in this tutorial we're going to look at how to take information that's been created in a plist and implement it into a table, and when we tap on one of the rows in a table to display the details. So what I have set up is a new application that was created using a master detail template. And if you haven't already, you can check out the introduction to Plist, which goes through setting up this template and also setting up the plist file that we're going to be using for our table data. So when you create a master detail template, right out of the box you get an application that looks like this in the simulator. We have a table view which doesn't have any data in it yet, and it also has the navigation set up so that when you tap on one of these rows, it will take you to another view controller that will show us the detail. And the file structure that we have has been set up that way for us. We have a master view controller class files, and then we have a master view controller nib file, and then we have a detail view controller class file and the detail view controller nib file. So there's no data that's actually coming into our table yet, and so that's something that we have to hook up. Now I've already created a basic plist of presidents. So we have what president number they are and the name of the president and the years that they were in office and what their party was. So I have a very short list here to keep it simple and make it easy to follow where the information is coming from in order to populate our table. So the first thing we have to do is to go into the master view controller and begin to set this up in order to use our president's plist to populate the table. So I'm going to start with the master view controller header file. So you can already see that there is the property set up here for the detail view controller. So by selecting that master detail template, it already set up to connect to our detail view controller. What I'm going to start with is setting up for our property for our dictionary. Our dictionary is our president's plist. So I'm going to call this dictionary, I'm just going to call it presidents. And I'm also going to initialize properties for the arrays, right? For each of our arrays in our plist, we have a number array, names, years, and party. So I'm going to initialize those also in our master view controller. So I'm going to call this an NS array, and the first one is number. So the number of the president, we'll say this one is for name, and we'll say years, and then the last one will be party. So then we'll be able to access those array elements throughout our application. So now I need to go into the master view controller M file, and we need to synthesize those properties. So I'm just going to put them in a list here. We'll say number, name, years, and party. And I'm getting an error here. And also, I need to put presidents in here too. Almost forgot about him. So we have to synthesize our presidents dictionary. Okay, next, in the implementation file, the master view controller implementation file, I'm going to scroll down to the view did load, and there are some things that we want to have happen when the application loads. First, we're going to set up so that the table has the navigation at the top has a little title on there instead of saying master. Right, so if you take a look now what happens when the application loads, this says master at the top. So right now we're going to change that to have a title. So when the view loads, what we wanted to do is change the navigation item of title equal to US presidents. So now if I run that in the simulator, right now it says US presidents. Next thing we're going to do is when the view loads, we're going to create a string that is equal to the location of our president's plist file. Let's start with a string, and let's say president's file, and that's going to be equal to called NS bundle for next step bundle, and we'll use main bundle. So if I click back over here for NS bundle, you can see under the quick help represents a location in the file system. So this is going to actually find the location of the plist file that is bundled in with the application file. And then the main bundle, you can see here, references the directory where the main executable is located. So in other words, our plist file is going to be in the same location as our executable file. So all of this is based on using a plist that's going to be bundled up with the application. And we need to find the path to where this bundle is. So we're going to say path for resource, and we want of type to find out we can specify what the file type is. So path for resource, so this is going to be the name of our P file, so our plist. So this is our precedence. The name of our plist file goes here, of type, and this is of the type plist. So now that we have a location of our plist file, we're going to assign our dictionary object to where this file is located. So we'll say precedence, right? This is coming from the name of our dictionary, right? In our header file, we created an NS dictionary called precedence. So now over here, we're saying, okay, this is what precedence is equal to, okay? And that is going to be equal to a dictionary, NS dictionary. It's going to be allocated and initialized with the contents of the file, and the file that we want it to be initialized with is our precedence file, right? Here we created this and said it's equal to our plist, and so here we say it's precedence file. Okay, next, now that we have our property list in here, we can access the values from our dictionary by using the keys. So for example, if I wanted to get the precedence name, then I can say we created variables over here called number, name, years, and party. So I'm going to say that their name is equal to the dictionary called precedence, and we're going to get the object for key. And the key that we want to get this information from is name. So again, object for key, if I click on this and we look at the quick help, returns the value associated with a given key. So this is going to give us the value for name. So I'm going to repeat this for the other elements in here that we may want to include in here. So things like years, and that will be equal to precedence, object for key, years. And then party, same thing, object for key. So hopefully you can see how this is starting to come together. We have name, years, and party, and we're going to our dictionary, which is represented by our precedence plist, and we're going to get the values for name, years, and party. So just going back into the precedence plist here. Oh, actually names with an S. I have to go back in and change that. Names, years, and party. That's the information that we're getting for right now. So let me go back into the implementation file, names. Otherwise, it wouldn't know what I was talking about. So names, years, and party. So now that we have that initial setup, we need to go in and set up our table. So I'm going to scroll down again by creating a master detail project from the template. It gives us a set of methods, some of which are absolutely required in order to work with the table. And then we have other ones that are optional. So number of sections in a table view. So how many sections? Right now we'll just leave that as 1. The number of rows in section. So this says return objects count. So what we want ours to be is how many precedents are in our plist. So right now we know that there's 4, but if you went in to add all the precedents and then every time there is a new precedent, you would have to go in and change that specific number. So rather than saying return an exact number, we want to say we want it to count how many items are in the precedence plist. So I'm going to say return presidents count. So however many things are in there, that's how many rows we will get. So let's just see if that works. I'm going to stop the simulator and run, and let's see if we just get 4 rows. Yeah, there we go, 4 rows. So this navigation is set up, but we don't have any content working in here yet. So far so good. Let's continue on. Okay, so the next method, customize the appearance of the table view cells. Again, this is a method that determines what the cells should look like, and since we've created the master detail project based on the template, it already gives us a bunch of code that you use for just about every table anyway. So it creates a cell identifier called cell, and we're saying the UI table view cell table view is going to use what's called a DQ reusable cell with identifier. In other words, your screen can only hold so many cells, right? Each of these rows is 1 cell, and a table only has 1 column. It looks like there'll be times where there'll be more than 1 column, but that's just how it's formatted. So if you had a list, if we had a full list of all the presidents and there weren't enough rows or cells in here to hold all the presidents, rather than making a different cell for each one, what will happen is if these scroll off the screen, it will use the one that just rolled off the screen. Or if we went down this way, it will use one that rolled off the bottom of the screen. It saves a lot of memory because if you had 1,000 different items in this table, it doesn't have to make 1,000 cells. It only has to make enough to show on the screen, and then it will reuse the ones that flow off of the screen. So that's what DQ reusable cell does. And then you can see if the cell's not empty, it's going to initialize it with style. There are some different table view cell styles, and it also is giving us this accessory type, which also helped us to see that it was just doing 4 rows. So disclosure indicator, which is that little triangle that was off to the side here. Okay, this next part is actually what is going to put some content into our cell, and I'm just going to comment these 2 lines out so that we can customize them for our own. And then this last line, return cell, is actually what's going to say, okay, now that we've created the cell and what it should look like and what it should have, return it or put it into the table. So I'm going to start by creating a string, and this string is going to contain the information that we want to put into the cell. And let's start by getting the president's name. So let's say name of president. That's going to be our string, and that's going to be set equal to, now our variable that we created up here for that information was name. So we're going to say that equals name, and it's going to be object at index, and it's going to be index path row. So object at index returns the object located at the index. So in an array, what we're doing is we're creating an array of names and years and parties. So as it's going through this array, it's going to create the table cell and put that information in. So we want to get whatever the current object is of that index path for that particular row. Now this is just saying that we've created this variable, but we haven't used it anywhere. So now we need to put it into the cell. So we'll say cell text label, and you can see how we're going to be using it kind of in this format up here. So text label, text is equal to name of president. Okay, so let's see if we can get the president's names to show up onto our table. And there we have them. No detail information yet, but we've at least gotten as far as grabbing the information from our president's plist, creating the array of names, and putting them into our table. What if we wanted to have a short little information in here that had the years that they were president? So let's come back to where we customize our table view cells. And one of the things that we saw in here was the UI table view cell default style. That's what we had in our example. It's just the default style. And you can see here, so we have the UI table view cell style subtitle. So let's see what we have for that. So we have different cell styles, and we can try changing what our style looks like, and that's the best way to give you an idea of how they vary. And actually, in the documentation for Apple, they show you some nice examples. So in the Apple Developer Library, on their Table View Programming Guide, you can see the different table view styles. And this is what we have right now, just plain default. And we can get section indexes, so you could jump alphabetical. But if you scroll down a bit, then you'll see a default style with an image, and then you'll see a default style with a subtitle and an image, and then value 1 and value 2, and then the different type of accessories that you can put in there. So for more details, check out the Apple Developer page on Table View Programming Guide. So instead of table style default, let's change that to table view cell style subtitle. Now we also need to get a string for information for our dates on there. So I'm just going to copy this and we'll just modify it a little bit. And so we'll say dates in office. And instead of name, we're going to get the information from the years array. And then we need to modify where the information's going to for our subtitle. So we'll say cell.detail text label text is equal to dates in office. So now let's see what that looks like. Looks pretty good. We have our title with our president's name and our subtitle with the years in office. And so now we need to set up our detail view. Okay, now to set up our detail view, I'm going to go into the Detail View Controller nib file. This is the user interface. And you can see we've got a little bit of content in here just to show that it was working to go someplace else. I'm going to make that a little bigger. I'm going to go to the attributes or the label panel. You can see this is the text that's in here right now. And we can see what it's connected to. It's connected to files owner, and it's called Detail Description Label. So if I go to the Detail View Controller implementation file, you can see that Detail Description Label has been synthesized. And again, this is all the code that's automatically been generated due to the template that we used. Also in here, you can see what was synthesized, a detail item. And this is coming from the Detail View Controller header file. Right, we have the detail item and detail description label, and in the implementation file we have methods that were already set up. Set detail item to the new detail item, and it's also configuring the view, and it's putting that information into the description label that's already there. So we'll be able to set our properties in the master view controller implementation file and pass that information into the detail view controller file to display the detail information about that particular president. So in this example, the only thing that we're going to pass in is going to be their party. So I'm going to go into the master view controller implementation file. And in the list of methods that we got automatically by using this template, I'm going to scroll down and find the method for did select row at index path. Now the did select row at index path method is fired off automatically when you tap one of the rows. So in here is where we want to configure passing the information from our row that was selected to the detail view controller. And you can see here that this code has already been set up, right? If there is no view controller, it's going to allocate and initialize the nib file for it. Again, we already have some code in here that it's passing in, and we can just comment that part out. And we'll also comment this line out so that we'll create our own information that will be passed in. So let's begin by creating a string that will have the party information. And we'll just say the party. And let's set that equal to the party object at index path row. Right up at the beginning in the view did load, right? We created the party where we got the object for the array. We got the object in our party array. So now we're going to access the value of what's ever in that row. And now we can put that into our detail view controller. So we'll come down here and say self detail view controller. We want to set the detail item equal to the party. So it will get this information, whatever is in the row for the array element that was tapped, it will be assigned to this string, the party. We're passing this into our detail view controller and setting that detail item to the party. So let's save this and run it in the simulator. So we have our 4 presidents, tap, and then we have our detail information. And you can see we have the navigation already set up for us, so everything works great. So this is grabbing the detail and information from our president's plist. Now you can also see part of the automatic template gives us these edit buttons where we could delete these, only it's only going to delete it out of the table for now. It's not going to delete the content. That's a whole separate thing that you'd have to wire up into your code. The same thing with adding in here. This will probably crash the application. So for now, to remove those buttons, I'm going to go back in, and the view did load. I'm going to select up here where it has a list of the methods that we can jump to pretty quickly. So I'm going to go to the view did load method. And in here, look to see. So here's the additional setup that they're doing. So we have the edit button. So I'm going to comment out the edit button and the add button. Now let's see what the app looks like. Okay, so now we just have our plain table, no additional buttons in here, and our navigation works to go to details. So that is populating a table with information from a bundled in plist.